Hi, my name is Dr. Jennifer Green. I'm a Fulbright Scholar from Western Washington University in the United States, working here at Al-Baqa Applied University in the Learning and Teaching Technology Center. In this video, I'm going to talk about what's going on in this picture. It is a free resource from the New York Times newspaper that gets students thinking, talking, and writing about topics. To get started, you just need to go to New York Times What's Going On in This Picture website. Even if you just Google what's going on New York Times, you will most likely find it. So what is it? Well, each week the New York Times posts an interesting photo from their paper. It might be one from a couple of weeks ago, it could be one from several years ago. And they have a huge archive of hundreds of photos that you can select from, so you don't need the most current video or most current photo. And with this photo, they ask students to answer 3 questions. First, what's going on in this picture? And that gives students a chance to sort of make some guesses to try to figure out what they see. Then the second question, what do you see that makes you say that? It forces students to give evidence. And this is a really important skill in reading and writing, to look for and to provide evidence in their thinking when writing argumentative essays, for example. And then they ask, what more can you find? And this forces students to kind of slow down, because too often we just look at photos quickly, we see the most obvious things, but we don't really look for those details. And by asking students to find more, it allows them that time to really look for those details. In the next few slides, I'm going to show you some examples on how to use this resource. Now, if you go to the website, the New York Times actually gives you several ideas on how to use it. And of course, you don't have to use their photos. You can still use those questions and those teaching ideas. But I'm going to focus more on how to use this in large online courses, because the Times does a great job of talking about using it for smaller in-person courses. So the first thing you'll want to do is to create a PowerPoint just for this activity. You don't want to include it with your lecture slides, for example. And you're going to be using this having your students use it in small groups. And so I'm going to have another video about creating small groups and using those in teams. So if you need help with that, you can refer to that video. But you're going to be using small groups. And so the first thing you'll do is make this slide, this PowerPoint presentation, and you're going to create as many slides as you have groups of students. And at the top, you'll notice on this example slide here, I have group 1. So on one slide, you'll have group 1 and the photo that they need to look at. The next slide will be group 2 and the photo they need to look at. And then when they break into breakout rooms, they'll go to the slide room that matches their group number. So if you have 120 students and you want to have students work in groups of 4, you're going to have 30 groups and therefore 30 copies of that slide. But before moving to those breakout rooms, it's really important to model what you want students to do, especially the first time you do this activity. And so here you can see the slide with the same image and the same directions that your students will have on their individual slides. And it's really helpful for you to do a think aloud or to model what you want your students to do once they get into their breakout room. So you might, model that thinking like, I'm looking at this picture and what do I see? Well, I see some people and they're like holding these white bags and I see some things flying and then I'm going to listen to my group mates share what they see, and then together we're going to write some things on the slide. And so again, in your model, you'll type a few things. not everything, because you want students to work on that. So you'll just give a couple of examples of maybe white cloth or people, right? And then you tell your students they're going to get into these small groups, go to their slide, and they're going to have 5 to 10 minutes to complete this activity. Now, if you're working with students in, say, English 99, you can probably expect individual words, maybe some phrases or simple sentences. And that's great. Then, if you're teaching in Students 101 or 102, or maybe courses where you have English majors, you can expect full sentences, maybe even some short paragraphs that demonstrate their level of language and their understanding of that picture. So, to review, use the PowerPoint and breakout rooms to allow your students to access and participate in this activity. Depending on your topic and your purpose, you might use different pictures for different groups, but you can also use that same picture for every group. And one great way to use this activity is as a warm-up activity, just to get students starting to talk with their classmates, to really thinking about what's going on. It's a really good warm-up. But you might use it also at the start of a unit to introduce students to a new topic. Or you might use it in the middle of a unit to practice particular vocabulary or concepts or grammatical structures that they've been learning. So you can see you can use it in lots of different ways and times. Now, after students have had time to write and talk in their small groups, when you come back together, you can ask students to share out what they're talking about, what they talked about. So you might ask students in groups 3, 10, and 15 to share out. And then a different time you might have students in groups 11, 27, and 30 to share out. You don't need to have every student in every group talk about what they've observed. But you'll have a record of every group because you have this PowerPoint. And so it's a great way to assess students. Finally, you have the reveal at the end. And this shows the actual caption from the picture, or maybe the article that the picture went with. And then you can talk about what the actual picture was from, discuss the clues that would help you lead to that, and that sort of thing. So thank you, and I hope you and your students enjoy this strategy.